Hello, I'm Tuppence. This is Froggy Friday. I have got my frog mould and this is going to be a festive edition. My frog is going to get his Christmas on. I've already mixed up 4 ounces of craft resin, so I want to tint that white using this pigment paste. As you will have seen from the thumbnail, I'm going to be making a snowman frog. So I'm going to want to make the resin white and then I can add some sparkle to that, and hopefully this is going to look like snow. So I've just given that a stir to make sure that that pigment is distributed through, and then I can scrape off most of what's on my stick. Pop that into my pot and look, I've already got it over me. I have to say I love the pigment, but I think I'd rather it wasn't in a jar. I get it messes all the time. Right, let me stir this into my resin. Now I used my Resiners mixer to mix this, so as I'm mixing this pigment in, I'm going to make sure to scrape the edges of my cup and the bottom, get all of that resin and the pigment incorporated. And then once I've got this mixed in, I'm going to add Dazzling Diamond's holographic glitter and this Opalescent chunky hex glitter. I'm going for a sparkling snowy frog. So this is looking pretty good, almost there. Just scrape this off, make sure that I haven't got any of that pigment left on my stick. So I'm going to give that a wipe, and that's a baby wipe I'm using. So I'm going to also use a paper towel to dry that off before I put that back in my resin. Now I can add my glitters. So I'm going to put a chunk of that in there. And I need to start looking for some more because that's running out. Although it does seem to be a never-ending pot. And now for the chunky glitter. Make sure that that is all mixed in. And I think I'm going to add some more of that, so I might as well add all of it. And that way I'm pretty sure I am going to be able to see the glitter all the way through the frog. Okay, now I have no doubt mixed a whole bunch of bubbles into that. So just clean off my stick. So I'm going to pour this in by lifting my cup up from a height. And I have sped this up a little bit because it will take me a while to fill this frog. Make sure I get into all the toes, tip the head up a little bit. Alright, and now I can use a stick to get that chunky glitter into the feet and make sure that there are no bubbles. Put the last bit in. Now, as I say, I've mixed a bunch of bubbles in this, no doubt, so I am going to let this sit for about 30 to 40 minutes before I pop my curing machine on to give it a chance to degas. It's the next morning now, so I'm ready to demould this. I'll take this out of the mould and hopefully we haven't got a mound of glitter on the back. It looks like I've got a little bit in the legs, so that should be good news for the front. Let's pull the leg out. Oh yes, that's nice. I haven't got a lot of glitter, but I can see the sparkle all the way through. Thank goodness it didn't all sink. That's a good start. I need to create some buttons for the snowman's stomach. So I'm going to mix a little bit of this black UV nail gel with my UV resin, and that's going to give me the colour that I need. Then I can use the smallest cavity on this Cabochon Mould to create 3 buttons to go down the stomach of the snowman. I'm going to use this UV torch to cure them just enough that I can pop them out of the mould. Then I can put them all together underneath my double-sided UV lamp and cure them thoroughly. Really tiny little buttons. Okay, under the lamp. Okay, I have my buttons and I'm going to be placing those along the back like this. But he also needs some eyes and a carrot nose. So I'm going to be forming my snowman on the back of the frog like this. So I need to put some eyes up on the back of his head. I'm going to use my dotting tool. Got that black resin. So I'll put a blob. And that's just too faint, that's not going to show up. So I'm going to clean that off, and I'll actually use the nail gel itself. That's a much stronger colour. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'll just pick up a little bit on my dotting tool. And then put a blob on the head. I'm sorry that you can't see what I'm doing with my hand in the way. But I do need to keep the dotting tool upright, otherwise you get an uneven dot. So just two little small blobs. I might need to just even those up a little bit. That's much better. Okay, I will cure that, and then I can give him a carrot nose, and I'll know where to put it. So I'm going to use this UV nail clay, and to do that I need to put a little bit of Vaseline onto the tips of my fingers. Don't need too much. You don't have to put it over all of your gloves, just on your fingers, the fingertips. Just work that in. Take off the excess with a paper towel. Okay, so I've got my clay, and I'm going to use this Tangerine orange mica from Arteza. I think that's a perfect carrot nose colour. So I just need to get a tiny blob out, and I think that's more than enough. Yep, that will be fine. Put the lid back on that before I expose that to the light. And I just need to colour the clay now. So I'm just going to tip some of that mica onto the lid, and I haven't even opened this one. That's fine. Let's peel that paper off, and I can press the clay onto the paper and just pick up some of that mica. And then I just need to mix that into the ball by squeezing and kneading it. Now the more you play with this, it will get warmer, and then that becomes more sticky and less easy to form the shapes that you want. So I do want to try and be quick. I'm going to roll that into a small ball and then try and roll it into a cone. Make the carrot, and then I can try that for size on my frog. Just flatten the bottom a little bit. And oh my goodness, I think that's a little bit too big, so we'll give him a quick nose job and make it a little bit smaller. So again, in a ball, in a cone, and then I can push this in place, and I think I'm going to give him a slightly upturned nose. So I just shape that between my fingers. And yeah, that's not looking too bad. Again, I'm going to cure this with my torch, and then I'll pop this underneath the UV lamp and make sure that it is cured properly. Okay, so the snowman now has a face. I think it looks pretty cute, that nose. So now I've got to put the buttons, but I need to leave room for a scarf. So I just need to attach the buttons, and I'm going to be using some of this UV bonding resin, and that's from Resin. It's a super quick resin glue. So I'm going to pick up the button with a pair of tweezers, put a little bit of the bonding resin on the back, and I'm hoping that there is still enough, I can get the light through enough to actually cure this. Oh, I've smudged that, so let me pick this back up and wipe that resin off and start again. There was a little bit too much on there. So I'm going to hold that in place and then see whether I can attach this with the torch. If I can, then all well and good. If not, then I'll have to use some glue. It depends on whether that light is able to get through the black resin or even up through that white resin. So I'm going to put it literally on top of the button. And that seemed to work, so I attached the other two as well. Okay, he already looks like a snowman. Now I just need to make the scarf and the hat, and I'm going to be using this air dry clay. I buy mine in a huge tub, and again I will leave links to anything that I'm using in the description box below. So I'm going to pull a little bit of this clay off of that lump, and I want to colour this. So there are lots of ways you can do it. You can use micas, but I don't really want to add any more powder to this and make it any drier than it is. You can also use alcohol inks, but I don't have a lot of colours of alcohol inks, but I do have alcohol pens, so I'm going to use that. And I'm just going to colour that exposed surface. That's enough. And then I can roll that up and knead all of that together. I might have to do this a couple of times, and I'm going for a sort of pink. I'm not going to look for a red. If you really want sort of deep dark colours, you can always paint it afterwards, but I'm happy with just colouring my clay. Okay, so I coloured this 3 times and I got a nice pink clay, so I'm just going to take a little bit off, and then this ball I'm going to shape over his mouth and the top of his head. Oh, okay, so those buttons are coming off. Never mind, I will glue that one back on afterwards. Right, just shape that, and that is automatically looking like a hat, so I'm just literally going to cover his mouth and chin and shape a kind of beanie hat. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to take this is a stencil brush, and I'm just going to stipple that and create some texture, make it look a little bit like it was fabric that he's wearing. That's looking pretty good. So now he needs a brim for his hat. I'm going to take that other piece and I'm going to roll that into a worm. Just use my fingers, although it is better actually if you use the palm of your hand. You tend not to get sort of lumps and bumps in it. But I just need to try and get this long enough to go all the way around the bottom of the hat. I am going to squash this, so I think that's probably long enough. So I'm just going to squash this with my finger and flatten it out a little bit. And that looks pretty good. And then I can add some texture again with the brush. Now I'm going to take this chisel tip silicone tool and I'm just going to put some lines along. And I'm not being specific about it, I'm not measuring them, I'm just putting lines in. Trying not to go too deep, I don't want to cut it in half. Okay, now I can wrap this around the bottom of the hat. Just bring that edge a little bit lower, making sure that some of it is touching what's already there. And this stuff does stick really well to itself. It also sticks pretty well to the resin too. So I'll just bring that around the back. Make sure that it touches the hat that's already there. And bring the pieces together. Okay, so that definitely looks like a beanie hat, and I've managed to pull another button off. I'm definitely going to have to stick those. I will probably do that off camera, and I'll use a little bit of super glue or something. So I'm just going to make sure that that seam is joined, and now I can move on to making a scarf. So I've coloured a little bit more clay, and I've already rolled out one of the white worms. So now I need to roll this pink one into a worm as well. And I'll try and get it the same length and the same thickness as the white one. Okay, now I'm going to lay them side by side and just gently push them together, and they should stick. And then I can take a pair of scissors and I'm going to snip a little bit off. Put that next to the white one and snip it and carry on, whoops, until I've got a whole row of stripes. Okay, last little bit, and it looks a bit like a marshmallow sweet. So now I'm going to take my acrylic roller and I'm going to flatten this out, and that's going to make sure that they bond together really nicely. Okay, I want it fairly thin. And I think that's fine. Now I'm going to take the same pair of scissors and I'm just going to snip along the edge until it's nice and flat. It's really easy to cut. Alright, and then I'm going to cut the main part of the scarf, and it's probably about 1 centimetre wide. Just want to make sure that it doesn't stick to each other. Okay, so this is going to be my scarf. I just need to snip off enough to go around his neck. And yeah, I was going to cut it a little smaller, but I think that's fine. So now I can shape that around his neck and just tuck it in. Put a few little curves. He already looks pretty snugly. So now I'm going to cut the rest of that in half. And then I'll take and pinch a pleat into one end, and this is going to be one of the tails. So again, I'm going to curve that around as if it's kind of blowing in the wind. And I'll do the same with the other one and curve that around on top of his leg. And it will stick pretty well. I don't have any glue under here at the moment. It is sticking really well to itself, and it should stick to that resin, but if it does pop off at any time in the future, I'll just put some glue underneath it and it would already be in the shape that it needs to be. So now I'm going to cut off a small part of the leftover clay, and I'm going to create a rough circle, and this is going to be the knot. So I'll put that in place over the top and then use that chisel tool to put some pleats in it. Make it look a little bit more puffed up and rounded. I'm also going to use the same chisel tool to add some lines on the bottom of the tails, and that's going to look a little bit like fringing. I'm also going to scallop it a little bit by pushing it against the edge of the tail as well. And then I just need to leave this to dry. I almost forgot to add the pom-poms, so I've got a little ball of the white clay and I'm using a nail brush to put some texture onto this. The bristles are a lot firmer, so I'll get a deeper impression. I'm gently tapping it against the bristles so that it doesn't squash the ball. And then I'm going to attach this using a little bit of bookbinding glue, again because I don't want to squash the ball to get it to stick. So I'll put a blob on the top of the hat, and then I can put the ball in place. I'm just going to use my dotting tool to get rid of any of the excess glue. And that's pretty much it. I need to leave this now to dry before I can add some finishing touches in the form of paint. So Froggy Friday is a weekly collaboration, and it is hosted by Lisa and Karen and assisted by Loula, Gert and Tim. Please go check out their channels, and you'll find a link to the playlist in the description box. Okay, this has been drying for 24 hours and I can add some paint. I also changed that pink brim out for a white one. So now I'm just using an acrylic paint pen and I'm going to put some dots of white around the hat. Again, I need to let that dry. Okay, that is dry. I'm just going to add this last embellishment. So this is a split pin, which you normally use for card making or scrapbooking, and it's a snowflake. Unfortunately, it's silver, so I am going to colour it using this embossing powder. It's a white embossing powder. I'm also going to add a little bit of glitter to it as well. So I'm going to hold those legs with the pliers because I want to heat this up. And then I can open this and you can see it's an ultra fine powder. This melts when you heat it up. I am going to actually heat up this metal pin, and as soon as this gets hot enough I can dip that into the powder and the powder will stick to it, and then I will be able to melt it again using this heat tool. It really does get very hot, this tool, so not going to take very long. Couple more seconds and then I can dip that into the powder and pick up. You can see it's melted directly onto the surface. So I'm just going to tap off the excess and then I can put the lid on that and get that out of the way. And then I'll carry on heating this up to melt that powder onto the surface, and you should be able to see it melt. Now I've got a white snowflake. I'm going to dip it into this ultrafine glitter while it's still pretty soft and warm, and that should pick up some of the glitter and give me a sparkly white snowflake. Just tap off the excess and there we go. That looks pretty good already. I am going to quickly heat this just to make sure that that sinks into the embossing powder and it's not going to all brush off. Just a very quick blast and that'll be enough. So now I have a sparkly white snowflake. It is pretty hot though, so I'm going to let it cool down and then I'll be able to cut off part of the legs and I'll be able to put it onto the knot of the scarf. The legs are a little bit too long, so I'm just going to take some snips and cut those in half. It's pretty thin metal, so it's easy to do, just bend it a little bit. Okay, so the foam clay dries and it is still a little spongy, so I just need to poke this into the knot of the scarf. But I'm not going to rely on that to hold it in place. I am going to glue it as well, so I'm going to add a small blob of B7000 glue on top of that hole. And then I can put the snowflake back in place. Take about 45 minutes to cure, but that should hold in place until that glue completely sets. And I think that is my frog finished. I really love him. I think I'm going to call him Frogsty. He's got a really nice sparkle all over. I've got enough glitter in the body that you can see it does look like snow, and the cute little buttons, and I love his carrot nose. I hope you've loved this video. If you have, please go ahead, give me a thumbs up, comment, share and subscribe if you haven't. I'm going to put a QR code just up here, and if you scan that with your phone you can join my channel. It won't cost you nothing and it will help me to bring you new content. Stay tuned for the photos, but thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye.